John chapter 4. Did you find it? This is a very wonderful story. Jesus has been teaching, and his fame has happened, and there's a lot of things starting to stir up with the religious leaders. So Jesus leaves one place, and he's going to another, and he's traveled a long time, this journey, even through the middle of all morning. And he comes to Jacob's well. Jacob had dug this well many years ago to get water for all of his animals and for his family as he was traveling. So it's known as Jacob's well here. And Jesus comes and he rests by it. He's weary. He's been walking a long time. And he's just kind of resting there. And the disciples have gone into the town that's nearby to get food and supplies and that kind of thing. So Jesus is just by himself. Jesus doesn't have many moments by himself. But here we have a moment by himself. And as he's sitting there, a woman begins to come. She's a Samaritan woman. And Jews and Samaritans, they don't really mix really well. They've got a real difference of opinion in some things. And Jews don't talk to Samaritans, which is really unfortunate. But Jesus just isn't any Jew. So the woman comes up, and I can just see her coming, and she's probably got a big old jar on her head, or she's got maybe not a jar, but maybe she's got a stick across her back that's holding 2 jugs of water. She's coming to the well to get water, okay? And this well is not a shallow well. So it's not like you can just bend over and, about it. You need to come prepared to this well. You need rope and you need a bucket. Because you're going to have to go really deep down into this well to bring up the water. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever been around springs or wells themselves. Some of them are they just bubble up out of the water, above the ground. That's the case at my grandparents' place. They've had a ranch out towards eastern Oklahoma for all my life, even before then. And there's a spring on that well. I mean, a spring on that land. And it kind of runs in a little ravine. And in fact, for over 100 years, way back in the 1800s, there was a little wagon trail through the little valley there where people would come to the spring to get water. And I'll tell you, it's a good spring. It's still a good spring today. It's cold. Oh my Lord, is that water cold. Okay, if you've ever been in spring-fed creeks, you know what I'm talking about. That water is cold coming up out of the ground. And it's cold, it's refreshing, and it's clean water. And it just bubbles up out of the ground, and it creates, it contributes to a whole watershed that's there in that part of Adair County called Peach Eater. Peach Eater. And there's Peach Eater Creek. And actually there's an unfamous song about Peach Eater Creek. You've never heard of it, neither have I. Except I was told about it, and that's why I said it's unfamous. Some of you caught that. But anyway, we're just moving right along. But there's Peach Eater Creek. So I swam in Peach Eater Creek when I was a kid because there was a low portion, and we'd go get in that creek. It'll change your life. Let me tell you, you get in that creek, I guarantee you that water is 40 degrees. I guarantee you it's 40 degrees. Now, on a hot day in July when it's about 105, that water is still 40 degrees, okay? So as much as you think, oh, it'd be great to get in when it's 105, it's still 40 degrees, okay? It's shocking what will happen to you, okay? But so that little spring there on my grandparents' land just feeds into it, okay? And so they built a house not too far from the spring because it kind of fills in down here, and it fills in a pond down here, and it goes in the creek, and the creek goes down the rest of it. But they built a house and they dug a well. Okay? They dug a well down there so that they could pump water from there. And it's a very shallow well. I would not go into that well today. Now, right now, at this time of the year, as cold as it is, it'd probably be okay. Any other time of the year, there's snakes. We're not going. So I always hated going down, have to open the door and lean over to turn on the faucets of the well to get water. You never knew what you were grabbing hold of. It wasn't the water hose. So anyway, it was always scary to me. But my grandfather would do it all the time. He'd water his garden. It was a fertile place. You could grow anything right there because of the spring. But that was real shallow. Jacob didn't have that opportunity to go shallow. He had to dig, and dig until they finally got down below, way down below the surface where the water was. Because that's where the good water was. Everything else was not there. And there are things that are worth digging for. Okay? They're worth digging for. And this well that Jacob had dug literally thousands of years before the time of Jesus was still there, and there was still water there. Think about that. That well had not run dry. And the people were still going to that same well with their long ropes and their buckets, just like this woman was, to get water. And her encounter with Jesus is, she's going there, she's coming up, and Jesus talks to her. Well, that's the first thing that shocks her right there. Wait a minute. She knew he was a Jew. She could tell. She was a Jew. And he said, would you give me something to drink? She's like, what you talking to me for? Jews don't talk to Samaritans. And especially me, a woman, they really don't talk to women. Okay? But Jesus is just saying, well, no, would you give me something to drink? And he said, well, no, there's water here. And he said, well, you don't have a bucket, you don't have any rope. What are you doing here, basically? What's your purpose here, Jesus? And he said, well, this is where Jacob had dug this well, and we draw from it. And Jesus said, but he said, if you knew who was sitting here, you'd be asking me for something to drink. Because what I have to give you to drink is not just water where you're going to thirst again. I have living water that you'll never thirst again because of this kind of water. Well, of course, in this conversation, well, that's amazing. This woman goes, well, give me that. Then I don't have to come back here and do all the toil with my long rope and my bucket to go all the way down and then pull this water back up. Where's this water that I wouldn't go thirsty again? Okay? And Jesus continues this conversation with her and asks her, well, where's your husband? It's like this is a little off script, isn't it? We were talking about water, and Jesus, you're worried about her husband? And she goes, well, I don't have a husband. He's like, you're right. He said, well, it's because you've had 5 husbands. And the guy you're with right now, he ain't your husband, but you're living with him. Okay, so do you see the setting? Here you have a lady who is a Samaritan. She's not Jewish. There is a form of worship that they have, but she's just living in sin. Can we just say it that clearly? Okay, she's had some life and a lot of experience of life. And can you imagine the hardships that she's gone through to have had 5 husbands? Okay? And probably in her day, that meant all 5 of those guys died. I'd be checking the food myself. Okay? Or maybe the water. I don't know. But she's had 5 husbands. And she's hanging out with a guy. Obviously, she doesn't want to have that pain again. So she hadn't married the guy, but she's just hanging out with him. And I'm sure that they're doing a little bit more than hanging out. But she's living with him. Which in that terminology is, she's with him. Okay? And Jesus says that to her, but doesn't say it to her in a way of a judgment. It's just a fact. Just this is your life. And she goes, oh, I perceive you're a prophet. Well, that's pretty good. pretty smart of you. And somehow that question or that statement about her current condition of life and Jesus revealing that to her without judgment, without condemnation, opens her heart because she's got a much deeper question that's in her heart. And this is a spiritual conversation that's happening here. And it opens up her heart to talk about God and worship. Worship. She came to the well that day just to get water. But God had something completely different in mind for her. She came there not to just find water, but to find the life-giving source of water. And that was Jesus. So this morning I want to talk to you for just a couple of moments and give you this invitation. Come to the well. Come to the well. And experience the transformation of worship. Because that is the question here in this story. All the details that John is giving us really sets it up. I mean, it's a great story, right? Jesus telling her all about herself. Later she's going to say, this guy told everything about me. No, well, he really didn't say everything. But somehow he knew about her 5 husbands. And guess what? So did the rest of the town. Okay? They all knew about her 5 husbands too. She was known in town. We'll just leave that right there. But this was different. Come to the well, because her questions was about God and about worship. There was something in her heart that she really was thirsty for. She was longing for, but nobody had really been able to give her the answers. Is there something in your heart and your life that you're really questioning about? That you're really wondering, God, what do you have? What is this? How do I go there? How do I get this thing? Or how do I become something that's been in your heart? Come to the well. Come to the well. There's 5 things here briefly I want us to look at that are attributes that really take hold of her life. Okay? The very first thing you'll find is she's thirsty. 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 This is something you need. Okay? You need living water. She needed living water. She was coming for regular water, but Jesus knew that she needed something different. It wasn't just water for the day or for her family or to cook with or to whatever it was to water her animals. This was an encounter with Jesus where she needed living water, but she was thirsty. And she wasn't just thirsty for this regular water. Look at the conversation. When her heart is opened up, what is she asking about? She said, well, hey, Jesus, I got a question, burning question in my heart. She's thirsty for God. She's like, you Jews say the temple is where you're supposed to worship, and Samaritans say, we have this mountain, we go up here. What is this? What is this worship? What is it? She was thirsty for God. She was thirsting for this. Jesus said this in his Sermon on the Mount. He said, blessed are you who hunger and thirst for righteousness. For what happens? You will be filled. She was thirsting for righteousness. She was thirsting for healing, for the brokenness of her life. And she was still confused because one says you got to do it this way, another says you've got to do it that way, and yet she was still thirsty for the thing that she needed the most, which was righteousness or right standing with God. That's what she was questioning. That was the longing of her heart. It's the same with you and I. Are you thirsty? Are you thirsty? If you're thirsty, come to the well. Come to the well. Because if you're thirsty, you will be filled. But you got to be thirsty. If you're not thirsty, you're not going to come. If you're just blasé, you're good, I'm good, I'm great. Just leave me here. I like the comfort of life. Don't mess with my thermostat. It's set at a perfect 70 degrees. Okay? Don't ruffle it too much. I've got the good life. Well, unfortunately, I'm sorry. If that's where you're at today, I'm really glad for you. But can I tell you, rough time's coming. At some point, it's not going to be so good. Are you thirsty? Are you thirsty? She was thirsty. But there was something else that she was too. Okay? This woman had been married 5 times. Her heart had been broken so much. She's living with a guy. She's in brokenness. She's desperate. Number 2, she's desperate. She's desperate. She's longing for something that is deeper. Something that is deeper. The woundedness of her heart is much deeper than just surface level. This goes way deep. This is a massive portion of her life. I don't know how old she is, but if you've been married 5 times, well, at least you're over 5 years old. I know that. You know? But she's desperate. She's wanting something deeper. But here is a deep well that she's going to draw out of. And yet the living water that needs for healing is sitting right on the outside of the well. If you're desperate, come to the well. Come to the well. When you're desperate, you're also willing to do whatever's necessary to get what you need. Because you're longing for something much deeper. Actually, desperation can be one of your greatest qualities. I remember several years ago, Sophia and I were in a time of our life financially where we had made stupid decisions. And so, we were paycheck to paycheck, and giving was a challenge. Okay? Any percentage was a challenge. And so I had just purposed in my heart to the Lord, Lord, give me opportunities to give, even the little bit I've got. Bring me opportunities. So I remember one day I was over in Jinx, and there used to be a Sutherland's that are over there. It's changed now, but there was a Sutherland's over there off Highway 75, and I was picking up some supplies, whatever it was we were doing at the house. I needed a tool or something. And I remember parking my car, and I noticed there was a woman kind of just as fast as she could. She was going from one car to the next. You could tell she had forgotten herself. Okay? Her hair was a mess. She was a larger lady. She was not wearing undergarments. Okay? I'm telling you, she had forgotten herself. But this is very noticeable, okay? And her appearance is she's mad, and she's literally going from one person to the next, so desperate, needing help because she needed $20 for a prescription for her child that they had just been to the doctor. Her child was very, very sick, and now in the desperation of her moment, she has forgotten herself of where her clothing, her attire, her appearance, everything, and she's literally begging from one person to the next, trying to get $20. And I watched as I sat there, as she literally, because of her appearance, every person turned her down. And I was like, and I knew she was coming. You know it, right? You know when somehow you've made eye contact and they're coming your direction, right? And I thought, oh, Lord, she's coming. And I'm going, don't look. Don't look. This woman has forgotten herself. Don't look. And she comes up and she She's literally in tears. She's desperate for $20. I didn't have $20. And so by the time, I was probably the fourth person, but she'd been turned down 3 times. She came to me. She is just, now she has forgotten herself, and now she's beside herself. She doesn't know what to do. The care for her child has overwhelmed her, and she's breaking down. Who would get her $20 so that she can get the medicine for her child? And she kind of went into the spiel, and I said, ma'am, it's okay. I said, I don't have $20. I don't have $20. But if you'll follow me, my bank is right down the street. I will go with you. I will get the $20. We will go get the medicine for your child. Okay? And she just broke, weeping. She was so desperate. Now, the outside appearance of desperation doesn't look good to most people. You look crazy. You look weird. But when you're hungry for something that is so much deeper, something that you have to have, you'll do whatever it takes to get it. To God, that is one of the most attractive things. Because He knows your heart. And you're desperate for Him. Now this woman, even though in this conversation we just see it kind of unveil, but for her heart, she is desperate to understand God and to understand worship. And Jesus goes on to answer and says, it's not in the temple, it's not in the mountain that you're going to find the place of worship. No, the time is right now where God is calling. Those that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. And He is seeking those who will do such worship. This worship of not just where it's extemporaneous or it's got these outer attributes or all of these to-dos that I've got to do, these rituals. No, it's something much deeper in the heart. It comes from a desperate place where I must have God. I must know Him. I must be able to be with Him. I need the life-giving presence of Him. That is the only thing that I need. And I am desperate for it, and I will do any and everything I can to get it. That was where her heart was. And you can see that. Where was she in life? She'd had the death of 5 husbands and she's shacking up with a guy. I mean, this is pain. And can I just say it this way? This is real life. This is where normal people live. We've all lived this. We've all had hurts, we've all had brokenness and mistakes and death to things and stuff that has happened. And we find ourselves in a broken place, and yet in desperation, Jesus is already there waiting for her. He's right there. Come to the well. Come to the well. Well, as this conversation keeps going, He's answering this question for her. On and on. And he says, those that worship Him, the Father, must worship Him in spirit and in truth. Spirit and in truth. Which we find then, there has to be something, another attribute. You've been thirsty. You're desperate. Okay? You have to be willing. Willing. To get to respond to the answer. Look at this. She is seeking out questions, seeking out the answers to her question. Let's read for just a second. In verse 10, Jesus replied to her, said, if you knew the gift of God and who you were talking to, you would say, give me a drink. You would have asked Him, and He would give you living water. And she says, sir, well, you don't have any bucket. How can you draw out this living water that's coming from? She says, are you greater than Jacob? Oh, yes, he is. He's very much greater than Jacob. In 13, Jesus answers and says, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty, but the water that I will give will become in him a fountain of water springing up to eternal life. This water, is that it would spring up out of her. Out of where? Out of the place where right now that she is broken, it would come to a place of healing, and then it would become a source of life. From within is where this is. But we had to be willing to keep seeking for these answers. Okay? To seek out answers to these questions. Are you willing to do that? Because it doesn't happen on the surface level in Christian life. Have you noticed that? It doesn't just come like, I love this in school. This is when we had textbooks, by the way, right? You'd take your textbook home. Today, my kids don't have any textbooks. It's all on the computer. And so, well, what would you do? You'd put the textbook under your pillow, and you'd say, I'll sleep on it. And then through osmosis, somehow the words on the page somehow get transferred into the brain as you sleep at night. And somehow you're going to wake up knowing the whole thing. I tried that. It didn't work. Right? It doesn't happen that way. The answers to the questions don't come that way. You've got to be willing to dig a little deeper. You've got to be able to go a little bit further. There was a willingness for this lady to stay into this. She was intrigued because there was something that Jesus was about to offer to her that would not only heal the brokenness of her life, but would transform it and change it into a life-giving spring that would come out of her. That would spring up living water. Out of the broken places would come life out of her. That's what Jesus was offering. This was intriguing. And yet she was willing to keep asking the questions. Because from here was her questions about God. She dug a little deeper. She wanted to know these answers. She was willing. So we find she's thirsty, she's desperate, she's willing, she's come to the well. She's come to the well. But this next part is a little bit interesting. Let's keep reading in our story. Verse 15, the woman said to him, well, sir, then give me the water so that I won't thirst again and come all this way to draw this water. Jesus said, well, go call your husband and come here. The woman answered and said, well, I don't have a husband. Jesus said, well, you're correct. You don't have a husband, but you've had 5 husbands. And the one that you're with now is not your husband. So what you've said is true. And the woman said, sir, I perceive you're a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain. Now, here we go. This is her. He's just revealed her heart and her life and what she's gone through. And her first question is not to push away from Jesus. Well, like, what do you mean? Like, now I'm exposed. Her first question is, verse 20, our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and yet you Jews say in Jerusalem is the place you must worship. And Jesus said to her, but believe me, woman, the time is coming when you will not worship the Father on this mountain or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know, but we, the Jews, we know, because salvation is from the Jews. But a time is coming, and even now it has arrived, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For such people, the Father is seeking to be his worshipers. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And the woman said to him, I know that the Messiah is coming, the one called the Christ, the one who is coming, that he will declare all things to us. And Jesus said to her, I am he, the one you're speaking to. He reveals himself to her. It is me. I'm right here. Which means, for this woman, it wasn't going to be a one-time drink for her. It wasn't a one-time worship where I can go to this mountain or to go over here or this. Is that there needed to be an immersion in her life. She needed to get immersed because one drink won't do. One drink of the wine is not there. What he's offering is life and a well then that would spring up that's constant. Do you see that? It is constant, this place of worship. And she's like, well, where is it? The Messiah is supposed to tell us all about this. And he says, I'm right here. I'm right here. And this changes everything for this woman. She realizes she's talking to the Messiah, to the life-giving Jesus that's right here. And immersion for her is ready. It is a long drink that'll keep drinking and literally live in this water. Immersed, changed from this point forward. That is her. And that is really what worship does for us. And this is the transformative power of worship, is that I don't come to a worship service or a private time of worship and get me just a little drink and that's going to do me. Now, it will quench a little bit of thirst. But where Jesus is calling us and what he wants to bring us to is a place where we are immersed in his presence. It's one of the reasons he's given us the symbol of baptism. Why we as Baptists believe that baptism is truly an immersion. That we go all the way under and into it. We don't just sprinkle or get a little wet. It's because there is a full immersion that God wants to put you down into. It's the Greek word baptismo. Okay? If you can do there's several meanings to the word baptismo. One of them is to marinate. To marinate. All of a sudden I'm thinking about barbecue. What time is it? Oh Lord. Now, Bruce, you'll tell me. Now, Bruce can. This brother can cook right here. Okay, if you ever get invited for a dinner cooked by Bruce, let me just tell you, you are fortunate. You are blessed. You are highly favored. This man can cook. One of his favorites is steak. Okay, he takes time with his steak, and it's like a week preparation. First, it's planning. It's getting the right cut of the meat. Okay, and then there is the preparation of the meat. It's the baptismo. Okay, it's the baptismo. It's going to marinate for a bit, and that meat, as good of a cut as it is, you know. And some people will say, "Don't ever add sauce to any great steak." Well, it's fine. You don't have to. When it's prepared right, and it has little... Oh, he's got a t-shirt on. Support your local barbecue dealer. Are you kidding me? Golly. He's got... Okay, Bruce, you got to stand up and show the whole congregation. This is not planned, by the way, okay? Yeah. I had no idea that this was happening, by the way. Okay? Wow. I think you're getting the picture, right? I think you're getting the picture. We don't have to beat the horse here. To marinate. When you get in the presence of God, don't rush out of it. Allow yourself to be baptismo. To sit in it. To marinate literally your heart in his presence. Soak it all up. Because when I come to the well, it's for me to be immersed into the presence of God. Worship will immerse me. One drink won't do. I got to have more. I need to be fully immersed in it. Because that is where the last one, transformed, takes place. Full transformation happens not with one drink. And it can be by the overcoming again and again to the well. But there's a place where I come and I can be fully immersed in this. And it is changing the fabric of my thinking. It is changing my belief structures. It is changing my actions and why I do what I do. It is changing my heart to where I am getting molded and shaped to the heart of God. And I am the one being changed because I came to the well. And that is the call that God is constantly giving to us. Will you come to the well? Are you thirsty? Come to the well. Are you desperate? Come to the well. Are you willing? Come to the well. This is where water is. This is where the living water is. If you will come and you will get immersed, there will be transformation that takes place in your life. The Word of God is described this way. He says this in Romans chapter 12. He says, therefore I beseech you, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you do what? To present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And he doesn't stop there. And he says, and don't be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, which is the immersion of the Word of God that brings transformation into your mind, your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions, and your beliefs, that then causes change to happen in your life where you can actually see the thing that you're hungry for, the thing that you're desperate for, that you're thirsty for, that you're going to see it come to pass in real time in your life. Not just a hope so for one day yonder over here, but for a right now, present day in my life. Do not ask me to repeat that. Do you see that? Now, briefly, 2025 will be marked by an immersion of the presence of God. An immersion. You're going to need to get in. You're going to need to get all in. Not just your toes, not up to your knees or your waist, or maybe your shoulders. You need to get all in. Fully immersed in the presence of God. So that in your life specifically, you'll see change that you've been longing for, that you've been hoping for. Unanswered prayer will be answered in the immersion. Things that we're believing God for the transformation of our community. Hundreds of lives changed. Thousands coming to Christ in faith in Christ. Where is that going to happen? When we stay immersed in the presence of God. Because if I'm here with Him, not only am I being changed, but now I'm a vessel for change. I'm full. When I go out, what's happening? There is a life-giving spring that's flowing out of me. It's flowing out of me. Everywhere I go, He's using me and life, His life, that water for the thirsty, for the desperate, is just flowing out. Do you see that? So the call of God to us for this year, steps that we've got to take. Come to the well. We see the rest of this story. What happens to the woman? Well, she goes running back to town. Disciples come up. They've seen see the woman. Jesus been talking with a Samaritan woman. Oh my gosh, Jesus, what are you doing? Okay, Jesus, we know you're tired. Let's give you some food, some drinks. He's like, nope, I don't need it. He said, I've got food that you don't know about. And they're like, well, where'd you get food to eat? This woman give you something? Like, no, you don't understand the will of God. You don't understand God's ways. because my food and my drink is to do the will of God. That is what it is. And they sit there, and he's telling them all of these things. He's saying, listen, you say that now, 4 months or some other time is the time of harvest. And he said, no, it's right now. Now is the time to harvest. The fields are ready and ripe for harvest. They are there right now. And here's the disciples sitting on it. This woman, in this whole meantime, they're talking about this. This is a very short period of time, by the way. She has gone into town and told everybody. Somehow it has gone all over the place. Come and see this guy who's told me everything about myself. And she's saying, he's the Messiah. This is Jesus. The one we've been waiting for. The one we've been thirsty for and desperate for. The one we've been crying out for to get us out of all this mess. I met him. He's at the well. Get to the well. Come to the well. He's over here. It caused such a stir. The whole town empties out. And where are they coming? They're coming to the well. Come to the well. And Jesus is there. He's a well that will never run dry, and it's there of living water ready to immerse you into it. And Jesus says to his disciples, he says, look unto the fields. I could just see him. He's looking back at the town. They're standing in front of him. Here comes all these people coming out of the town. And he's like, boys, turn around. Look, the field is ready for harvest. They're all right here. What happens? It's a revival that takes. It's a move of God takes place. So much so the people beg him to stay there. He stays for 2 more days, and everybody gets touched. Everybody gets changed. The whole town is turned upside down. You want to know what's going to happen here? What's going to change here? Is Jesus is here. Come to the well. It's here. Jesus is here. If you'll come, you're going to come to life-giving water, and it's going to change your life. And when it does, it'll ripple out to everywhere else around you, and the whole community, the whole town will get turned upside down and changed. Okay? Can you believe for that? Are you thirsty for that? Are you desperate? Are you willing? Will you get immersed? Will you allow God to transform you? Will you bow your heads? There's a great quote by John Piper that says this, for your heroes you pick mannerisms and phrases, tone of voice, facial expressions, habits, demeanors, convictions, and beliefs. These are things that we esteem high of other people. But more admirable the hero is, and the more intense your admiration is, the more profound will be your transformation. In the case of Jesus, he is infinitely admirable. And our admiration rises to the most absolute worship. Therefore, when we behold him as we should, the change is profound. Where do you hold Jesus? Are you thirsty? Are you thirsty? Will you answer God's call to come to the well?